This happened last year, back when I was working the night shift at a small gas station in Arizona. The station sat right off a lonely highway, and after 2 a.m., almost nobody stopped there. One night, at around 3 a.m., I was sitting behind the counter scrolling through my phone when the old emergency radio in the corner of the store suddenly turned on by itself. I immediately looked up, because that radio was never used. It only received emergency weather alerts and police broadcasts. But this time, all I heard was static. Then suddenly, a man's voice came through. Very quiet, very nervous. He said, "Don't let the woman in the red jacket enter the store." For a few seconds, I just sat there. I honestly thought someone was playing a prank. Then the radio went silent. That was it. I didn't think much about it. But about 5 minutes later, the front door opened and a chill ran through my body, because the woman who walked in was wearing a red jacket. She looked completely normal. She grabbed a coffee, picked up a bag of chips, paid for everything, smiled at me, and walked back out. Everything seemed normal. I let out a breath of relief, and honestly, I started laughing at myself. But about 20 minutes later, the radio turned on again. The same voice came back, but this time it sounded much more afraid. It said, "You let her in." The smile immediately disappeared from my face. Then the voice spoke again. "She's still inside." And the radio went silent. My hands froze. I slowly looked around the store. Nobody was there. The entire place was empty. I tried convincing myself it was some kind of prank. But then I heard something fall. The sound came from one of the aisles. I immediately looked over. Nothing. A few seconds later, it happened again. This time from a different aisle. Now my heart was starting to race. I slowly stepped out from behind the counter and began walking through the aisles. Everything looked normal, until I noticed something near the end of the last aisle. For just a split second, it looked like someone had turned the corner. A flash of red, like a red jacket. I immediately rushed over, but nobody was there. Only empty shelves. Now I was genuinely uncomfortable. I went back to the counter and started checking the security cameras. At first, everything looked normal. Then, I saw the woman on the parking lot camera. She was getting into her car. I felt relieved. But then, my eyes moved to another screen. One of the cameras inside the store, and my blood ran cold. Because at the exact same moment, while the woman was getting into her car outside, a figure wearing a red jacket was standing at the end of the last aisle, completely motionless. I stared at the screen, unable to move. Then suddenly, the camera glitched and the figure disappeared. I immediately rewound the footage, but this time, nothing was there. It was gone. As if I had imagined the entire thing. At that exact moment, the radio turned on for the third time. Now the voice was whispering, "She's standing behind you." A freezing sensation rushed through my entire body. I instantly turned around. Nobody. But then, my eyes shifted toward the live camera feed above me, and my breathing stopped, because on the screen, I was standing in front of the counter, and directly behind me was the woman in the red jacket. Her face wasn't visible. She was simply standing there, watching me. I immediately looked behind me. Nothing. Then back at the screen. Then behind me again. But every single time, she only appeared on the camera, never in the actual store. Then, slowly, she lowered her head and smiled toward the camera. At that exact moment, every light in the gas station shut off. The entire building was swallowed by darkness. A few seconds later, the lights came back on. The radio was silent. The cameras were normal. And the woman was gone. I quit that job the very same night. But the strangest part happened 2 months later. I was working in a different city, living a completely normal life, when one evening I received an old email. Attached to it was a security photo from that gas station, and beneath the image, there was only one sentence. "You weren't the first employee she followed." The photo showed 5 different employees, from different years, standing in different locations, but behind every single one of them, far in the background, was the same woman, wearing the same red jacket. This happened about 2 years ago, back when I was working the night shift at a small gas station outside of Texas. The place was miles away from the nearest town. At night, only a few cars would pass by, and after 2 a.m., the entire area felt completely deserted. One night, around 3 a.m., I was sitting behind the counter scrolling through my phone when the front door opened. I looked up and saw a man walk inside. He was wearing a black jacket and a dark baseball cap. At first glance, he looked completely normal, but after a few seconds, I noticed something strange. He kept looking outside, like he was waiting for someone, or like he was hiding from someone. He walked over to the coffee machine, filled a cup, and then came up to the counter. I scanned his items. Then he looked directly at me and asked, "Is the back door always locked?" The question caught me off guard, because normal customers don't ask things like that. I simply nodded. "Yeah." He stared at me for a few seconds, then smiled. And without saying anything else, he walked out. I figured that was the end of it. But about 10 minutes later, when I glanced at the security monitor, my heart nearly stopped. The man was still standing in the parking lot, completely motionless, staring directly at the gas station. And the strangest part was, there was no vehicle anywhere near him, no car, no truck, nothing, just him, standing there, watching. I kept staring at the screen, trying to figure out what he was doing. Then suddenly, a loud noise came from the back of the store. I immediately turned around. The sound had come from the storage room. For a few seconds, I just stood there. Then I decided to check it out. The storage room was small, just shelves, boxes, and an emergency exit door leading outside. As soon as I stepped inside, I noticed a cardboard box lying on the floor, probably what caused the noise. I let out a breath of relief, but then my eyes shifted toward the back exit door, and I froze. The door was slightly open. I knew for a fact I had locked it at the beginning of my shift. Slowly, I walked over and pushed it shut. That's when I noticed something outside. Wet footprints leading directly to the door, but there was something wrong with them. The footprints came toward the building, but none of them went away from it, as if someone had walked in and never walked back out. A cold feeling settled in my stomach. I locked the door again and headed back to the counter. The first thing I did was check the security monitor, but this time, the man was gone. The parking lot was empty, the road was empty, everything was empty, as if he'd never been there at all. Then about 5 minutes later, the front door chimed again. I looked up, and my stomach dropped. The man was back. After he left, I kept staring at the door for a few seconds. some reason, his last words wouldn't leave my mind. If anything feels strange tonight, don't go to the back. For about 10 minutes, everything was normal. No customers, no sounds, nothing unusual. I slowly started convincing myself that the guy was just weird. Then suddenly, a notification appeared on my phone. Motion detected, back door camera. My hand froze. Because almost nobody ever went near the back of the building, I immediately opened the live feed. At first, everything looked normal. An empty fence, empty pavement, nothing moving. Then, someone stepped into view. A man. Black jacket, dark cap. The same man. He was standing directly outside the back door, completely motionless, staring straight into the camera. A chill ran through my entire body, because only a few minutes earlier, I had watched him leave through the front entrance. Then, slowly, he raised one hand and pointed directly at the camera, as if he knew I was watching him. The moment he did that, the feed froze, the screen turned black, and the camera disconnected. I just sat there staring at my phone, trying to convince myself it was a technical issue. But then, the store's landline phone rang. Ring. I nearly jumped. Nobody called the gas station that late at night. I picked up the receiver. Hello? For a few seconds, there was only silence. Then, a man's voice quietly spoke. Is he still standing outside? A cold feeling shot down my spine. I immediately said, "Who is this?" No answer, just slow breathing. Then the call disconnected. Now my heart was racing. I quickly looked at the front camera again. The parking lot was empty. No one was there. But at that exact moment, something crashed in the back of the store. This time it was louder, much louder. And then I heard something else. Footsteps. Slow footsteps. Coming from the direction of the storage room, my first instinct was to go check. But then I remembered what the man had said. Don't go to the back. So I stayed where I was. The footsteps continued for several seconds. Then suddenly, everything stopped. The entire gas station fell silent again. Complete silence. Then my eyes drifted toward the security monitor above me. And what I saw made my stomach drop. Someone was standing outside the front entrance, right against the glass doors, so close that I could clearly see his face. But it wasn't the man in the black jacket. It was someone else. Someone I had never seen before. He wasn't moving. He wasn't blinking. He was simply standing there, staring directly inside the store, and somehow, the longer I looked at him, the more uncomfortable I felt. Almost as if he wasn't looking at the store. He was looking at me. The strange thing was, when I turned and looked at the actual front door, nobody was there, only darkness outside. I quickly looked back at the monitor, and my blood ran cold. The man on the screen was smiling. For a few seconds, I just stared at the monitor. My heart was pounding so hard that I could hear it in my ears. The man standing outside the door was smiling. Not a normal smile. Not the kind of smile someone gives when they're happy. It looked wrong, like he knew something I didn't. I immediately turned and looked at the actual front entrance. Nobody. The parking lot was completely empty. Just darkness. I looked back at the monitor. The man was still there, standing inches from the glass, smiling. Then slowly, he lifted one hand and pointed inside the store, directly toward me. A chill shot through my entire body. Before I could react, the screen suddenly glitched. Static flashed across the monitor. The image distorted for a second. and when it cleared, the man was gone. I quickly checked every camera angle, front entrance, parking lot, gas pumps, nothing. Nobody was there. I sat back down behind the counter, trying to calm myself down, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Then I heard the front door chime. I looked up immediately, and my stomach dropped. The man in the black jacket had returned, again. He stepped inside and walked straight to the counter. This time he looked terrified. His face was pale, his hands were shaking, and before I could say anything, he leaned toward me and asked, "Did you see him?" My throat went dry. "See who?" The man glanced nervously toward the windows, then back at me. The guy outside. A cold feeling spread through my chest, because I hadn't told him about the figure on the monitor. Not a single word. I stared at him. "How do you know about that?" For a moment, he didn't answer. Then he slowly reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out an old photograph. He placed it on the counter. I picked it up. The picture showed the same gas station, but it looked old. Really old. At least 10 years old. At first everything seemed normal. Then I noticed someone standing in the background, near the edge of the parking lot. A tall man, completely still, watching the camera. My heart nearly stopped, because it was the same face I'd just seen on the monitor. The same smile, the same empty eyes. I looked back up at him. "What is this?" The man swallowed hard, then quietly said, "I've been seeing him for 6 months." Every hair on my arms stood up. Before I could ask another question, a loud noise echoed from the back of the store. Bang! Both of us jumped. The sound came from the storage room. Then another noise followed. Bang! Like someone had just slammed into the back door. The man in the black jacket immediately stepped backward. The fear on his face got worse. Much worse. Then he whispered something, so quietly I almost didn't hear it. He found me. My stomach tightened. "What are you talking about?" But before he could answer, the lights above us flickered. Once, twice, 3 times. Then everything went dark. For a split second, the entire gas station disappeared into blackness. And in that moment, I heard footsteps. Not from outside, not from the storage room, from somewhere inside the store. Moving slowly between the aisles, getting closer and closer. Then the lights came back on. The footsteps stopped. The store was empty. But when I looked at the man in the black jacket, his eyes were locked on something behind me, and the expression on his face told me one thing. Whatever he was looking at was standing right over my shoulder. For a moment, I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The man in the black jacket was staring at something behind me, and the fear in his eyes was unlike anything I'd ever seen before. Slowly, I turned around. The aisles were empty, no customers, no movement, nothing. But the moment I looked back at him, his expression changed. He looked confused, then terrified. Then he whispered, "Where did he go?" A cold chill ran down my spine. Before I could answer, the security monitors above the counter suddenly flickered. Every screen changed at the same time. Front camera, parking lot, back door, gas pumps. Every single monitor now showed the same image, a tall figure standing inside the store. The problem was, the figure was in a different location on every camera. On one screen, he was standing near the drinks. On another, he was beside the entrance. On another, he was near the storage room. As if he was everywhere at once. My heart nearly stopped. The man beside me took a step backward, then another, and for the first time since he'd arrived, he looked like he was about to run. Suddenly, one of the monitors changed. The front entrance camera zoomed in by itself. The figure was now standing directly outside the store, facing the glass doors, completely motionless. Then slowly, his head tilted, almost like he was studying us. Neither of us spoke. Neither of us moved. Then the screen glitched, and when the image came back, the figure was gone. At that exact moment, the front door chimed. Both of us snapped toward the entrance. Nobody had entered. The door was still closed, but the chime had definitely gone off. Then it happened again. Ding. This time the door slowly opened by itself. A rush of cold air entered the store. My stomach dropped. The parking lot outside was empty. No cars, no people, nothing. Then I heard something, a voice, very faint, coming from somewhere near the entrance. It sounded almost like a whisper. At first I couldn't make out the words. Then it came again, slightly louder, and my blood ran cold, because it sounded like someone saying my name. The man in the black jacket heard it too. I could tell by the look on his face. He immediately backed away from the door. Then he grabbed my arm. His hand was shaking. "Listen to me," he said. "If he says your name, don't answer." I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" But before he could respond, a loud crash exploded from the storage room. This time it sounded like the back door had been hit with incredible force. Both of us turned toward the sound. Then another crash came, even louder. The lights flickered again, and for a split second, I thought I saw someone standing at the far end of the aisle, watching us, waiting. Then the lights stabilized. The aisle was empty, but the man in the black jacket had gone completely pale, because he was no longer looking at the aisle. He was looking at the security monitor. I followed his gaze, and the second I saw the screen, my heart nearly stopped. The front entrance camera was showing the inside of the store, and standing directly behind us was the tall figure only a few feet away, watching, smiling. For a second, neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. The security monitor clearly showed the tall figure standing directly behind us, only a few feet away, watching, smiling. My entire body went numb. I slowly turned around. The store was empty. Nothing was there. No figure, no customer, nothing. Then I looked back at the monitor, and my stomach dropped, because now the figure was even closer, close enough that I could make out details of its face. Its eyes looked wrong, almost empty, like there was nothing behind them. The man in the black jacket stumbled backward. He looked completely terrified. Then he whispered, "He never gets this close." Before I could respond, every monitor in the store suddenly went black. At the exact same time, the lights flickered, once, twice, then everything went dark. The entire gas station was swallowed by darkness. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then I heard it. Footsteps, slow, heavy, moving somewhere inside the store. Tap, tap, tap. Each step sounded closer than the last. My phone flashlight was shaking in my hand. I pointed it toward the aisles. Nothing. Toward the drinks. Nothing. Toward the entrance. Nothing. Then suddenly, the footsteps stopped, right behind me. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't even breathe. The silence felt unbearable. Then, a voice whispered directly into my ear. My name. I spun around instantly. Nobody. The store was empty. But when I looked back toward the counter, the man in the black jacket was gone. Completely gone. Like he'd vanished into thin air. "Hello," I shouted. No response. Only silence. Then my phone vibrated. A security notification. Motion detected. Front camera. My hands were trembling as I opened the feed, and the second the video loaded, my blood ran cold. The camera showed the inside of the gas station. The counter, the aisles, the entrance. Everything looked normal, except for one thing. I was standing there, alone. There was no man in the black jacket anywhere in the footage. Not beside me, not near me, nowhere. My heart nearly stopped, because I'd spent the last hour talking to him, watching him, listening to him. Yet on the camera, he didn't exist. Then something appeared behind me, the tall figure, standing only inches away, watching. I stared at the screen in horror. Then, slowly, the figure raised one arm and pointed directly at me. At that exact moment, every light in the gas station came back on. The security feed disconnected, and the notification disappeared. I didn't wait another second. I grabbed my keys and left. I quit the next morning, and I never went back. Months later, after moving to another city, I convinced myself the whole thing was over. Just a bad memory, a nightmare, something I'd eventually forget. Then one night, around 3 a.m., my phone received an automatic cloud backup notification. Old security footage from the gas station. I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. The video showed the entire night from beginning to end, and what I saw still terrifies me. The footage showed me standing behind the counter, talking, nodding, responding to questions, as if someone was standing in front of me, but there was nobody there. The man in the black jacket never appeared once, not in a single frame. It looked like I'd spent the entire night talking to empty air. I felt sick. Then I skipped to the final few seconds of the recording, and that's when I saw it. The tall figure, standing behind me, perfectly still, watching the camera, watching me. Then slowly, it turned its head and smiled. The video ended there. I've never gone back to that gas station, and I've never watched that footage again. But sometimes, when I wake up in the middle of the night, I remember something that still doesn't make sense. The man in the black jacket knew things he shouldn't have known. He knew about the figure. He knew about the cameras. He knew what would happen before it happened. And if the security footage is real, then there was only one person in that gas station that night. Me. Which means the man I spent hours talking to may never have been there at all.